I'm Luna, 32, and I've been married to Gabriel for over a decade. We have two children, Ellie, who is 10, and Caleb, who is 6. Our marriage has always been smooth sailing. My spouse paid for our family, while I focused on our children and our home. I understand that this is a conventional lifestyle that is not for everyone, but my spouse has always been a traditionalist, which I don't mind. My spouse lost his job earlier this year. He never went into detail about what happened, but he's been, well, moodier since he changed. He's become more selfish and irritable, and he's lashed out at the kids and me several times over little matters. Paisley, my mother-in-law, moved in a few months into his unemployment to, quote, be there for her precious boy during an emotionally tough period for Natalie. Well, she's made my life a miserable nightmare ever since. She criticizes everything I do. From the food I prepare to my home and my children, nothing is ever good enough for her beloved boy unless it is done the way she wants it. She insists on preparing separate meals for herself and my husband and refuses to eat whatever I provide. The house is always too dirty for her, and our children are constantly too rambunctious. I never imagined a woman could despise her grandchildren until I saw Paisley's treatment of my children firsthand. My husband has been tough to reach during this ordeal. When I bring up how his mother continues to degrade me in our own home, he said she's only looking out for him and wants what's best for him. When I inquired whether he meant I wasn't good enough for him in his and his mother's opinion, he simply avoided the topic. Regarding Paisley, nothing can be said. He is an absolute mama's boy, who will bend over backwards to satisfy her, ignoring his family in the process. Regarding him, I am speechless and unsure of how to sustain this marriage. Paisley's presence in our home has exacerbated my husband's temperament. He's not only impatient and volatile anymore, but he's also entitled. He expects to be waited on, refuses to spend time with or care for his children, refuses to help with housework or duties, and has given up on his job search entirely. Paisley does his laundry, prepares him meals and snacks, and even makes his bed. We've been sleeping in different rooms. He has reverted to adolescence, and sharing this house with them is exasperating. Paisley recently contacted me while I was preparing lunch for my children, who had just returned home from school. I was stunned when she asked why I couldn't find work to pick up the slack and increase our family's income. I hadn't worked in a decade and had given up my ideal job due to my husband's desire to establish a, quote, traditional family, and now this. I turned to her and asked if my husband would look after the kids and clean the house while I went to work. She laughed right in my face. She said that the wife is responsible for the children and the home, while the man is just responsible for the finances. Okay, fine. If that was the case, I asked her who she believed paid the rent and bills at the house she'd been residing in for free for the past few months, because I've been covering most household expenses with income from dividend shares in my family's business since the beginning. She stormed out of the room, and later that night, my husband chastised me for disrespecting his mother in such a way. I questioned him about why he never stood up for me, which he was clearly disrespecting me, but he replied that it's not the same. I asked him if he planned to acquire a job soon and how long his mother would stay with us. He assured me that neither of those things were his concern and that she might remain as long as she wanted, and he would extend his leave of absence from work since his mental health required it. I said all right, as long as they didn't bother me in any manner. I'm proud of myself for standing up to them in this manner. However, something appears to have shifted in our household since then. Both of them have become more distant from me and our children. My husband behaves less like a father and more like a stranger who happens to share a house with a couple of strangers. My children are unhappy and are attempting to participate in more extracurricular activities because they feel unwelcome in their own house. My mother-in-law and husband are frequently heard conversing in hushed tones, and every time I walk in, they come to an abrupt halt. My husband has begun leaving the house more frequently, sometimes for hours, if not days. He'll sometimes be gone all night, and I'll see him return when I'm making breakfast. When I inquire where he's gone, he says it's none of my concern. I was once close friends with his companions, and we used to hang out frequently. However, time has passed, and I have lost all contact with everyone. I'm also scared to inquire if my husband has spent time with them because if he finds out, he might strike out at me again, and I might not like the response his buddies give me. This is no longer a relationship. I feel like a housekeeper and like I'm being alienated in my own home. I have no idea how to proceed from here, guys, and well, it appears like divorce is my only alternative. I can't take sharing a room with my mother-in-law or spouse any longer, and it's making my children unhappy. I feel like I've squandered more than a decade of my life with this man, and I no longer recognize him. I'm also afraid because he's the only person I've ever been with. I've never lived alone since leaving my parents' house. I've never had to fend for myself, and I'm not sure how I'd handle being a single mother. But I feel compelled to attempt it for the sake of my children. Is there another path I could take here? You can go to hell with those who called me names and sent me death threats. I've done nothing except give in to this man's every demand and toss away my life in order to start a family and a house with him. And now it's up to me to pick up the pieces. I left the house a few days ago to meet with a divorce lawyer. I'm normally constantly at home, especially when my kids have school, but I had a friend drop them off today. Paisley chose to take advantage of the fact that I was finally out of the house for a while, because when I returned, I found numerous boxes and bags full of our clothing and other trinkets scattered about the lawn, dripping wet in the rain. My children were huddled together under the porch, scarcely protected and always drenched. My keys did not work when I went to open the front door. Paisley used the intercom when I hammered on the door, wanting to know what was going on, to notify me that they had changed the locks and that I may take my belongings and leave because I was no longer wanted in their home. I was taken aback. I asked her what she was on about, and she told me that the next time we spoke, it would be through a lawyer, and that I should leave her and her son alone and stop acting so desperate. I tried calling and texting my husband multiple times, but the calls and texts were not going through. He had clearly blacklisted my phone number. In tears, I contacted my father, and he arrived almost quickly with his vehicle, helping me load whatever had been thrown away and covering my children in warm, fluffy towels in the back seat. We traveled to my childhood house, where I sobbed more than I had ever sobbed before. I believe decades of agony and unhappiness were finally being released, and I fell asleep like that before waking up to my mother gently shaking me and asking me to eat something. We talked to the divorce lawyer again, and he informed me that I could keep everything that was still in the house, including some pricey jewelry and all of my critical paperwork, which Paisley had wisely avoided throwing into the storm. It was already midnight when a neighbor finally contacted me. Paisley had apparently gone around the neighborhood informing everybody who, well, was witnessing the drama that I'd been up to no good and was not living up to my commitment as a wife. So eventually my spouse moved on and asked me to leave. After doing some research, I discovered he had finally landed a high-paying job at a new company. The same lady who moved into my house today worked in human resources. It didn't take long for 2 and 2 to become 3. It's been 2 days, and my father has finally gotten my belongings back from Paisley and Gabriel, albeit with some difficulty. They wouldn't let him in until he called the cops, and I'm not sure what they would have gained by retaining my jewelry and paperwork, other than possibly holding it over my head as blackmail or trying to sell the items for more money. My kids are considerably happy at my parents' house, where they are continuously spoiled and showered with love and care. And I'm glad they've adjusted so swiftly and moved on from their traumatic experience. My sadness has faded. I'm now fueled by rage and a deep hatred for the two of them. I don't think they realized how much I contribute to their way of life, and I can't wait to pull it apart and watch them fall from grace, knowing that I was there all along. Gabriel and his mother are unaware of the extent to which my family's influence has infiltrated their lives and how simple things have become for them. I contacted the landlord of the house I was living in today. I informed him that I no longer lived there and that my husband and I had divorced. He was charging us rent that was substantially below market value because he is a close family friend. He contacted me back later that evening to tell me that he had seen the house and that it was nearly bare bones, since most of the furniture, appliances, and other decorative items in the house were mine. And they've since been removed. He informed my soon-to-be ex-husband that I had moved out of the house. They were no longer eligible for his close friend discount, which resulted in a modest home rent increase. Paisley apparently tried to haggle, bargain, and eventually beg him to keep their rent. But he refused and instead gave them a 1-month notice of the rise. He informed them they had 2 options: pay the whole sum or leave. So I imagine Gabriel, his mother, and his new side piece will be homeless in a month. The divorce proceedings are running as smoothly as they possibly can. Because there is evidence that Gabriel had an affair, the court will very certainly rule in my favor. We've already decided that I will have full custody of the children, which means Gabriel will owe me child money on a monthly basis. We'll also try to milk him for all he's worth in terms of alimony. I'm not ashamed to admit that I'm doing this solely for spite. After everything he's put me through, the less he has to his name, the happier I am. My kids are doing well in my parents' house. They found friends in the neighborhood and spend their evenings outside playing video games with the other kids, and arriving home flushed, weary, and alive. I've never seen kids happier, and it further reinforces my belief that this is the best decision I could have made. I've also begun to indulge in pastimes that I had to give up a long time ago. I enjoy painting and baking, and I'm considering becoming a more active member of the family business. And I've asked my father to mentor me so that we may retire happily and I can carry on the business that he's always wanted to start. Overall, things are improving. I'm happier and more at ease than I've been in years, yet I miss the company and the good times. But it's easy to remind myself that the wonderful days have passed and haven't been seen in a long time. I think the most important thing right now is to look ahead, and I'm still young, with so many more fresh starts, new relationships, and chances ahead of me. It's been a few months since Gabriel and Paisley couldn't afford the rent on our house and had to downgrade to a small two-bedroom apartment in a somewhat dodgy section of town, according to what I've heard. He seemed profoundly upset whenever I interacted with him during the divorce proceedings with our lawyers present. I believe he recognized that forcing me out of my house wasn't going to solve his problems. His lawyer has tried to milk me for my worth so that he can rely on some funds. But given the evidence of his affair, they don't have much of a case, do they? In other news, I've been much more involved in my family's business, and I've recently discovered that the company we've been in talks with for months is the same corporation that employs Gabriel and his side piece. When my father found out, he accelerated the purchase as of last week. We own the business. You can probably imagine what happens next, but we'll take our time and perform a thorough investigation before taking any severe action. My children occasionally inquire about their father, but they have never had a pleasant impression of him. The questions are more about whether he is still a grouchy, scary old man in their words and less about whether he will return to our lives. They admire my parents and enjoy their company, and they have told me that they prefer Granny to the other bad witch, Paisley. I wish kids hadn't been exposed to such terrible and unpleasant influences at such a young age. But I hope I was able to get them out in time and that it didn't harm them in the long term. I'm still surprised at how readily Gabriel agreed to give me full custody of our children. It appears that he never desired or was interested in them. And I'm sad they had to spend so many years with someone who may have made them feel unwanted. But as I already stated, the only thing we can do now is look forward. Here's to wishing my children nothing but happiness and growth, and to finally getting rid of Paisley. My children and I are doing fantastically well. We've been kicked out of the family home for about a year. Their grades have improved, and their social lives are flourishing, and I'm glad to see them flourish in an environment that permits it. We've initiated an extensive inquiry into Gabriel's workplace ties after we acquired the company where he worked, not just between Gabriel and his partner, but among all employees of the organization. Within a few weeks, Gabriel, his sidekick, and another couple were dismissed and are being sued for workplace sexual misconduct, with proof. The fact that this was all a coincidence is astonishing. If I won't lie, the taste of vengeance is delicious. As I already stated, it was a pure coincidence about our company. I've been in talks with them for a few months before Gabriel was employed there. I'm just fortunate enough to have it work in my favor. I would not have gone to such lengths to take my vengeance on Gabriel. After how he has treated me, I doubt I would wish to expend any additional time or effort on that individual. As of yesterday, I learned that Gabriel's side piece, who was dissatisfied with her new living circumstances and was often at odds with Paisley, eventually lost her job at his cost, grew delusional with him, and fled. I suppose some things are simply not built to last. I'm not sure if Gabriel is aware that my company is responsible for the false accusation that cost him his job, and to be honest, I don't care. I don't need him to know that I'm responsible for everything that's going wrong for him right now. I'm just relieved that I'm no longer in his life. Are you going down with him? Huh. In addition, I contacted my prior landlord, who informed me that our old family house was now for sale, because of sentimental reasons. We're thinking about buying the house because my kids grew up there and loved it. It would be a significant step, but it would also be permanent. I frequently brought my kids to my parents' house so they could still hang out with their friends in the evenings while receiving spoils from their grandparents when they required it. We'll see how things proceed. It simply needs a little more thought, but it's definitely something we're considering. I received a call from Gabriel a few weeks ago, which confused me because we've been interacting only through our lawyers for the previous year. And now that our divorce has been finalized, there is nothing more for us to discuss. Despite the fact that his alimony and child support are still pending, he wanted to meet with me because he missed me and wanted me back. I laughed at him and wondered if he was going to run out of money, and he did. His mother had grown tired of coddling him and recognized that if she continued to attend to him hand and foot, he would never be able to stand on his own. something I've been trying to tell her for a long time but was yelled off for. She departed and returned to her own home, leaving Gabriel to fend for himself. With her gone, he realized he had spent the previous decade completely reliant on me and could hardly manage to do his laundry. I believe he was looking for an easy way out by asking me to return. Perhaps he hoped I still loved him and wanted our family back together enough to drop everything to go save him. Perhaps he thought he still had power over me. Whatever he had hoped for was not present, and I informed him that we were divorced and would remain so. He had put me through hell and deserved to go through it himself. I also requested that he not contact me again unless it was directly related to the funds I expected from him. Even then, it would be through our lawyers. Then I got off the phone with him. I'm not sure how, but he's pleading with me to return to him and give him the closure he so desperately needs. It was a sudden realization of how far I'd come in the last year without him. And I sobbed because I'm so proud of myself and how I was able to get back on my feet. My children and I have returned to the house from which we were evicted. It is ours. We redecorated it collectively, and kids got to design their own room. It's been a lot of fun painting the walls and everything. We've also adopted a puppy named Levi, which we couldn't do when their father was around because he detested animals. The kids adore Levi and do everything they can to look after him. They walk him, feed him, and even attempt to teach him tricks. I'm closer to my parents than I've ever been. I believe Gabriel isolated me from them and my friends for a long period of time without my knowledge. I've gradually rebuilt my social circle, and I'm now out practically every weekend, seeing old and new friends. I get to attend my children's school events as well as their extracurricular activities. I'm happier and more fulfilled than I've been in years as I watch them compete in sports and plays. I've even gone on a couple dates and felt so confident, proud, and most importantly, young. I'm not sure how or when I let Gabriel take so much from me, but I'm slowly regaining it all one day at a time, and I'm grateful that I can. Take the first stab at anyone reading this who is in a bad marriage and striving to leave. I promise it will be worthwhile. I mean, really. Purchasing the company and firing both your ex and his mistress? It doesn't get any better than that, in my opinion. Checkmark. Today's karma.